Hi everyone, my name is Yariv Cohen. I am your Education Technology Specialist coming to you with a presentation on Universal Design for Learning, or UDL as you'll see it in this presentation. And I hope to provide you with a good background on what Universal Design for Learning is, how it can look in our classroom, and by modeling it for you here in this presentation. And it'll come up multiple times how I am thoughtfully presenting to you about Universal Design for Learning, utilizing some of the principles. Before I start it, I think it's really important to focus in on the why we're doing this. And I think before we go forward with any of this, we need to actually see it, right? We need to see and envision that student. And this is the why we're doing this, why we plan, why we're thoughtfully thinking about all the ways that we can actually plan or resources we can collect is to meet the needs of this child. And it's not always a child, right? It's just the student. So you might be a student currently in a PD, or you were at a professional development opportunity as a student, a learner. You might be taking classes like I am, and you're trying to take in what one teacher or a collection of teachers are presenting. And they don't know you perhaps as well as you hope that they would. They don't know that you like to read, or you might not like lectures, or you might like to watch videos that you can pause, rewind, turn up louder, perhaps see some captions that are coming through so you can actually watch, listen, and read. And they're trying, right? They know us as adults, we have maybe more practice in studying than our current students do in our classroom. And that's where we're thinking about Universal Design for Learning, where it's not a one-size-fits-all by any means. Universal does not mean that. It means that we are going to think of meeting all the students on both sides. We're thinking about the edges. The students who think and learn this way, and the students who think and learn this way. Because there is no average. And we might have been taught when we were a child in school by a teacher who thought, I'm going to teach to the average. Or we might have started in our practice thinking, I'm going to teach to the average. I'll reach the most kids that way. But we learned through neuroscience and through research that there is no average. So who are we really teaching to? And if we could start thinking about this student who might come in perhaps not having had a chance to see their mom this morning because she worked a double shift last night and she won't get home until their fourth period starts, or dad didn't say that they love them this morning. They're potentially coming in with pressures from home, pressures from friends, pressures from teacher, pressures that they put on themselves. On top of that, they have their likes, their dislikes, their strengths, their weaknesses. And it's just trying to meet the needs of all these students. A daunting task for sure. But that's why we're here. We're here to learn how Universal Design for Learning can help. And it's understanding the why. It's all centered around the student. Now, if you do any research on UDL, you will inevitably find this site called CAST. And it just CAST, if you type in CAST, you're going to see some really interesting stuff from them. It's an organization trying to provide ways, and they've created these principles that we'll get into about how you can meet the needs of all the learners in your classroom. And there's this fantastic video that I encourage you to pause my presentation now, and you could click on the slide and click play and watch the UDL at a glance video from them. But hopefully I'll cover the majority of what they are going to share as well. But I want to provide you yet another way to take in this information. I'm trying to model that I've planned using UDL. And when we see the video, they're going to talk about, and you'll see, and I'd like to now focus on the universal design for learning principles. Now, these principles that we see here are going to be really clear, hopefully, with also seeing the part of the brain. And I love these models because it's showing us the part of the brain that is being accessed when we talk about the why or the what or the how of learning. And let's take a closer look at the what first. The what of learning. And we're talking about here providing multiple means of representation, giving multiple ways for students to express their understanding. This principle is going to provide options for graphics, videos, text, or any other effective format that helps eliminate barriers. And we're talking about eliminating barriers such as students not getting it for the first time when they're exposed to some content, like pausing this video, this presentation, going back and rereading a slide, clicking on a link. This principle provides options for manipulatives. Let's say in math class, we're looking at a division problem and students see 5 divided by 2. And they're thinking, I might not know how to do that. Or perhaps giving them a Hershey's bar. Or having a block that they can break apart into equal parts is going to help them get division. Or just understand it and see it in a different way. This principle provides options for helping students be actively engaged. When we provide models and scaffold and background knowledge for students, it's going to help them be actively engaged because they're going to start to feel comfortable knowing something about the content. And that's part of the what of learning. When we look at the how of learning, here we're talking about action and expression, providing multiple means of action and expression. It's talking about addressing physical barriers. So again, barriers like the first principle, but here are the physical barriers so students don't feel like they can't demonstrate their understanding due to some motor skills. Now, this principle is going to provide options for physical action, audio recordings, voice recognition software, wireless free keyboards, the ones that are not one big rectangle, but can actually maybe be manipulated and turned and twisted, or any other assistive technology. This principle is going to provide options for extra time for students to practice or process so that they can build fluency. This principle is going to provide options for executive functions. When we scaffold their executive functions, we're talking about helping develop critical thinking skills. We can help students develop goals or even checklists to support planning. Checklists. We just give students maybe a checklist of 4 or 5 items depending on the grade, depending on the project and the task. It helps them, okay, I've got all of these things here. I've got this. I can do it. And they might even start to feel good about doing those checklists. I know I do when I'm at the supermarket and I check things off, or when I'm planning and I start checking things off. I feel good about it. Okay, it's a sense of accomplishment. Next, we can talk about the why. Now, the why of learning, we're talking about engagement. Multiple means of engagement. It motivates learning and it helps students persevere when they're faced with a challenge. This principle is going to provide options for recruiting interest. It's giving choice so that they feel ownership over their work, or making sure projects are meaningful to them so that they have a sense of purpose, that they can connect to their work. That's recruiting interest. This principle provides options for sustaining effort and persistence. We're giving options that allow students to balance out when the work seems too something, right? Too hard, too easy, too boring. These options include collaborating with others or giving them feedback or hearing feedback from someone else that validates for them that their practice and persistence is what matters, not the errors. Errors are just the steps they take towards success. This principle provides options for giving students a way to regulate their own learning. set goals, deal with emotions, reflect on their progress, successes, failures, areas of strength, weaknesses that will help them become lifelong learners. I think this quote was really powerful when I read it in the book, and I reference it towards the end, and it's UDL focuses on curricular disabilities because it is the curriculum that cannot meet the learning needs of all students and needs to be fixed. Powerful, right? We're learning that what we've been given, what's been used, the way things have been done, what we've perhaps created is disabled, right? It is something that needs fixing. Not our students. We can't label our students. They're coming in with differences. It's our job to meet their needs and understanding their differences, just like you and I are. The likelihood that everyone's the same is false. The likelihood that everyone is different is almost entirely true. It's most likely something is going to be found to be different with every single student. Now, you might have some that are grouped. For sure, they like maybe reading, but they might have still come in having something happen right before they entered class, right? Having that mood affect them. Now, when we look at universal design for learning and the guidelines, you could see here across are the principles, and then the guidelines are here, and they're broken out into 9 guidelines with subheadings. Now, this is a great example of a checklist. When you're planning, you're creating units or lessons, you can use this as a checklist. You don't need to get it all in. You might get half. You might get 5. You might get 2. There's no judgment. It's just this list that you can utilize when you're planning. Now, when we think about these guidelines, we must remember that they're flexible. They are not rigid. It's a mix and match as needed, as is acceptable within your classroom. You're going to test around, you're going to mix, match, you're going to find some that works, some that you struggle with, some you might want to meet with others and ask, hey, how does this look in your classroom, or how can it look in a classroom? The thing to remember are these 3 main purposes. It's to support lesson and unit planning. It's a tool to assess our instruction or materials. And again, facilitating discussions about our curriculum. I think that is so key, that we continue talking, we keep the conversation going about meeting the needs of all our students. Now, when we think about this big idea, it's remembering students want to learn. They love to learn. Our brain loves to think, right? And they're here. We just need to remember it takes time. But we can do it as long as we share the responsibility of teaching each of our students. And we remember we're not alone. We can count on each other. And I hope you count on me. Please see me, email me, come up to me, any which way you'd like. You know, I'm open to any which way that you'd like to reach out to me. Speak with your colleagues, your other coaches, your admin. Reach out to them. Ask, what is UDL, or what does it mean to you? How does UDL factor into your planning if you're unsure? Just a couple of good prompts to start the conversation. Thank you for watching this presentation on Universal Design for Learning. I look forward to chatting with you when you'd like to talk a little bit more about UDL. Thank you.